1261 wasn't the end of the world for the Venetian Republic, but you could see how they might think that. See, the Latin Empire that they'd helped found, the Latin Empire you can think of as taking up a good part of modern-day Turkey and Greece and parts of Hungary, used to be the Byzantine Empire until the Venetians had an idea and took a little side trip during the Fourth Crusade and instituted what we would call regime change. And their price for doing that, installing the French Crusaders in the place of the Byzantines, was, in their very Venetian, very fraction-friendly way, was a quarter and a half-quarter of the Roman Empire. The Byzantines, of course, did not call themselves the Byzantines. They thought of themselves as the Romans. So, that's great for them. That's 1204. But in 1261, the Latin Empire they set up had been doing a long, steady nosedive for 60-ish years. Like, the French did not know how to administer that part of the Roman Empire, just drove it into the ground, which was great for Venice, because they got all the sweet trade deals from that. Unfortunately, they could not have seen coming the revenge of the Byzantines, who swiftly, under the Pelagius dynasty, rose up and kicked the French straight out of Constantinople. This was very bad for the Venetian bottom line, which is how usually the Venetians thought of things. It got worse because the Byzantines had wised up to the Venetians' tricks and had decided that, you know what, our best friend Italian city-state is now not Venice. You stole a quarter and a half a quarter of our empire. You know what? No. We're going to give the nice trade positions to Genoa. Whenever you see the word Genoa in a Venetian history book, I just sort of hear the Seinfeld inflection of Newman. There's just an undercurrent of disgust with Genoa that is shared by the Venetians. And these guys have no reason to love each other. They'd been feuding since 1099 in the First Crusade, where they vied for the very profitable murder water taxi business of taking the Crusaders to the Middle East, and had been at each other's throats off and on ever since. So not only did their puppet dynasty get overthrown, but the Genoans are going to take all the good trade spots. Surely, this year can't get any worse. Ha ha! When you think things can't get worse, you call the Mongol Empire. Because, for the people who know their history, 1261 means that the Mongols are approaching the height of their empire, and they've just set up a khanate in the Middle East, the Ilkhanate, the sort of Mongol Middle Eastern branch, and the Golden Horde, which is now what is Russia. And it looked like the Genoans were going to get first bite at that apple too, because since the Byzantines favored them, they would let the Genoans go through the Black Sea and engage in the valuable slave and spice trade back out. Ironically, the Genoans would sell those slaves from the what is now the Ukraine and Kipchak steppe to the Egyptians, Mamluks, who were in charge of fighting off further Mongol advances. So it was a nice little system. This is looking very uncomfortable for the Venetians. All the more ironic because 40 years earlier, so the legend goes, when the first Mongol scouting raid came through on a little drive-by of Europe, the Venetians had sold them accurate maps of the Caspian Sea region with the proviso that they used those maps to kick the Genoans right in the trading post. So you can see this sort of vendetta goes deep. This is a scenario that I think would have anyone running around with their hair on fire, screaming, the sky is falling! But the Venetians took it on the chin in the same way they usually do, and opened trade negotiations not only with the Byzantines, but also with both Mongol khanates that bordered them, and in a wonderfully, I think, Italian way, started trying to ingratiate themselves with their new best customers. There's a source that says that as trade relationships got more intimate, the Italians, Genoans, and Venetians decided to start naming their sons Mongol names. So you would have a kid named like Khan Grande Barzini, Great Khan Barzini, or Hulagu Pigafetta, which are not actual historical personages, but they are Mongol names and Italian surnames, which means that in another world we missed out on a really great possibility for Mongol-Italian fusion food that doesn't bear thinking about. Anyway, the Venetians managed to eventually write themselves the most famous account of the Mongol Empire from an Italian perspective was a Venetian, Marco Polo, but in 1261 it was really hard for the Venetians to look on the bright side. Thank you.